Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. We have one amendment to the agenda, and that is the a sketch public hearing for Gutma has been postponed. So we have on the agenda tonight the continued site plan public hearing for Rick Bove doing business as HDI Real Estate. Before we begin this evening, I would ask that anyone who is going to be presenting testimony, I'd like you to please swear in, and that is a simple acknowledgement for any testimony you present this evening will be truthful to the best of your abilities. If you're online, just either wave your hand or something. If you're muted, that's fine.
I do.
All right, thank you. We good in the room? Excellent.
Does that mean anybody who wants to contribute?
Anybody who's going to say anything to us tonight?
Well, that's not the way you put it. Can we repeat
Anybody who's going to speak to us this evening, if you could please swear in and present that or affirm that any testimony you present this evening will be truthful to the best of your abilities. All right. Thanks, Paula. It's good to keep me on my toes. We've missed you. So first thing, we have an opportunity for folks to give us public comment for items that are not on the agenda. We don't often get them, but if you want to speak to us for something that's not on our agenda tonight, this is the perfect time. Yes.
Please.
You have to at least say your name loudly.
Paula Duke.
Oh, I think.
Paula Duke. I would like to recommend that the Planning Commission support the idea of the town of Essex hiring a full-time building inspector, even if we have to go in with another town to accomplish it. That's it. It's semi-related to this evening's
Did you say building inspector?
experiences in the
Say
past.
say that again for me, please.
Which part?
The whole thing. I'm a little slow tonight.
I would like to recommend that the Planning Commission support the idea of the town of Essex hiring a full-time building inspector, even if that means going in with another town to accomplish that.
Okay.
I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I don't think you mean building inspector.
Yes, I do.
No, I don't think you do. So, building inspector inspects building codes during construction. We don't have those.
The state has building codes,
The state has.
and the town is all towns are expected to
Yeah.
follow at least the state's building codes.
Yeah, okay, we can take this up for debate. That's not how Vermont works, but
That's okay. You've made your pitch. Thank you.
I could just say there's a lot of hands up. I think your hands are up from the oath. If that's the case, could you turn your hands off? Lower your hand.
All right.
You have one on Teams who I believe is actually looking to comment.
Okay. I don't have that up yet, Darren. So if you could call it out for me.
Sharon Zakowski.
She just put her hand down.
Okay.
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I didn't put my hand down. I think it's your word. I think I'm guessing, I can't put words into Paula's mouth, is she is speaking of a building inspector that inspects rental properties. I know that I have a duplex in Winooski, and every 3 years, and I really appreciate it, they go through and tell me if code has changed, if I'm using the wrong smoke detectors, if there's any hazards, like I didn't have the apartments marked well enough for emergency services. I think that's what she's talking about. And it does exist in Vermont, in both Burlington and Winooski. And there's a fee for it, like $200, every year, unfortunately. But I think that's what she was talking about. So it does exist in Vermont. That's
Okay.
Thanks.
So I think that would be something that we would route to probably.
I think, Paula, you might be referring to a code enforcement inspector.
Both.
Because building inspectors, like in Massachusetts, inspect during during
Yeah, they call.
I'm talking about both.
okay, but so
I,
we'll have to bat that around because Essex doesn't have building codes, but
Okay.
we can talk about that.
I think it's a
uh,
legitimate
they-
question, and we can move on from there.
okay, they don't enforce. They don't enforce local codes. These local building inspectors, because the problem is the state people don't have enough time. Like
So,
you almost have
respect,
all the money.
we're gonna think.
Yeah.
I think it's you're echoing Paula's comment or question
Okay.
or concern or recommendation, and I think that's all that we can get into this evening.
Okay.
We don't have enough information, and it's not something I feel we can or should debate this evening.
No, but I think it might be relevant to the upcoming application. So maybe it'll be brought up again then.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Dusty, if I may.
Yes.
I have somebody who just signed on with a telephone number of 338-8561. Could I have your name? Okay, guess not.
So also, I'm going to make a request that if you're not speaking or we haven't recognized you to speak, if you could please make sure that your mic is muted. And let's move on from here. So the agenda item that we have this evening is the continued site plan public hearing for Rick Bove doing business as HDI Real Estate. This is a proposal for two residential buildings totaling 30 apartment units in the located at Commonwealth and Carmichael Street. Ned.
As we discussed, I have another relationship outside of this kind of work with Mr. Bowe, so I am going to recuse myself from my planning role tonight and sit in the audience for a while.
Okay. Thank you, Ned.
I told you didn't have to work.
I'll do both.
Carry your load.
Okay. So, commissioners, I'm going to go a little bit outside of our normal flow, and I'm going to go directly to the applicant. We have a very thorough, very comprehensive staff report. And I feel that the staff has pretty much laid out all of their concerns, questions, comments, and positions in that staff report. So I'm in the interest of really getting to the heart of the matter, I'd like to go to the applicant and find out what exceptions they take to the staff report, understanding and expecting that there will be some. And I'd like to go right into that. So I'm not sure who's going to be presenting. Is it
Brian and I.
But I'd like to, let's look at the staff report. Let's look at what we've got and where we're differing.
Paul, let me know if you need plans on the screen.
And commissioners, for those of you online, this is John, Tom, is that it? John and Tom? Josh.
I'm here.
Okay. If you guys have something and I'm not seeing your hand or something like that, please shout out when we get to going back and forth. I don't want to miss anybody.
Will do. No, just do what you were gonna do. Start with.
So, Brian Courier, Paul O'Leary Burke Civil Associates, representing Rick Bove, doing business under HDI Real Estate. Before we get into aspects of the staff report, this is a continued hearing from June 10th, 2021. At that meeting, HDI proposed 3 buildings as part of the overall town center plan. A similar layout and master plan was approved in 2017. That application consisted of Building G, 15 units, G1 of 15 units. Building H at 3 stories was 22 units and 6,000 square feet of commercial space, included underground parking. As part of our amended proposal, the essence of it is Building G is still 15 units, G1 is 15 units, and Building H is now 4 stories and 30 units. and contains 7,600 square feet of commercial space and underground parking. In addition, our new proposal includes the construction of the first phase of the town green. As part of that original meeting on June 10th, there was a lot of discussion about what was good for the town center moving forward, and we asked for very specific guidelines to move forward with the project. And the Planning Commission did provide us with very specific feedback on what they would like to see as part of a continued hearing. You asked us for more density and would support a height waiver to Building H in order to conserve commercial space around Carmichael Street. We've added a 4th story to Building H. There's all commercial along Carmichael Street, which totals 7,600 square feet. The remaining first floor on Building H is just amenities for the apartment units above. The 4th story increases the unit count on Building H from 22 to 30 units. And the 4th story requires a height waiver of 54 feet. I believe our application requested 66 feet. It's actually 54 feet for the record. And that's all the changes for Building H. You asked for more variability of buildings, looking at the architecturals. Scott and Partners have revised the elevations to change the roof lines on buildings G and G1. They've changed the color palette on the buildings, trying to satisfy a more of a mix and not a solid building as you would look at it going down Commonwealth. In addition, buildings G and G1, we don't need a height waiver for. We did request one as part of our application, but they will be constructed less than the 40 feet required in the district. You also asked for a more attractive streetscape. We hired TJ Boyle Architects to look at the streetscape. They changed some sidewalks, reoriented the parking in the back, added some green areas, some green islands. They added street trees, many shrubs, and many plantings around the buildings. For rough numbers, there's about 50 trees, 15 shrubs, and over 300 grasses, perennials, and different types of ground cover around these buildings. The addition as part of this proposal is a portion of the town green. We're proposing to put in street trees on the south side of Carmichael Street, benches, and put in a green of about a quarter acre, over a quarter acre on the southeast corner of the development. And finally, you asked us, or you asked for approval conditions to be drafted as part of a continued hearing based on the 2017 approval. And as part of our cover letter, we have provided those approval conditions. And we're here to answer any questions you may have about these amended items that we've tried to satisfy the Planning Commission from the previous hearing.
Okay.
So we had a lively meeting in June, as you recall, and we asked specifically for direction, and you gave it to us. And I mean, I can read the minutes from the last meeting, but the minutes were clear as to what we had to come back with. In fact, the last line of the meeting minutes says, Chairman Brusso asked staff to rewrite as an approval, incorporating the comments made. So the staff report is pretty similar to as it was back then. They really haven't changed too much. They really haven't added anything. They've strengthened their argument a little bit. They certainly haven't written an approval. So we've held up our part of the bargain. We redid the buildings, hired the landscape architect, we looked at the streetscape, re-looked at the height on building G, added the town green features across the street. We've done everything you asked for us on our June 9th meeting. And so we're back today looking for approval. Now, if you have specific questions about something in the staff report, water issues, density, we'll be glad to answer those. But essentially, it's a very negative staff report. It was the first time, continues to be. And, you know, we don't really think at this point in time we need to go down through that staff report point by point, because frankly, I don't think they did what this board asked them to do. Am I wrong about the meeting minutes?
Thank you for your comments on that. I think that's irrelevant to what we're here tonight. We have a staff report, and it's not at this stage. It's for the commission, as you stated a number of times. It's for the commission to decide. So we have a staff report in front of us tonight, recommending denial, and there's clear statements, both in the conclusion at the beginning of the staff report and the conclusion at the end of the staff report, that provide clarity for recommending a denial. So every meeting, the process evolves, the review evolves, and the review enhances, changes, whatever. When I read this, I find quite a few comments from staff about information that was requested that wasn't received, and I would defer to Darren and Oiso for specifics on that. So we are looking at this staff report this evening.
All right, so I'll make some comments about the staff report. All right, one issue was Public Works talked about needing a revised traffic impact report. All right, so we prepared the original traffic report back in January of 2021. And this project, with the additional 4-story, added some additional units. We went from 54, I think, to 60 units. We added a little bit more commercial space. Long story short, we added 11 PM peak trips. So Public Works came back and said, well, it's 11 more trips. We want to see you redo the traffic report. And we responded back to staff and the Public Works that, well, since January of 2021, Barbara Russo has changed. The original January report included Barbara Russo in their original spot. Now, as we all know, they're moving to the cinema. So their trips are still in the mix, but the cinema's trips come out of the mix. So we're losing somewhere between 100 and 150 PM peak trips from the cinema. So we responded back to staff that, look, there's no reason to redo the traffic report because we have roughly 100 trips less than what we had in January. And that's where that stands. You know, there's no reason to redo it when we have less trips, and obviously the impacts are going to be less than they were in the January report, which, by the way, was found to be satisfactory by Public Works. There's the issue of water pressure, all right? So the staff says, looking at the ETC plan, which envisions a large build out, that there's an issue, potential issue with water pressure in it. So, you know, we built the building right across the street, Building O, which is a 3-story building, and there's no water pressure issues there. And we basically got back to staff and said, look, the static pressure at the street on the first floor is 60 pounds, which means that on the 4th floor, the static pressure, if you're taking a shower, is going to be 45 pounds, right? Plenty of water. Any of us who have a well know that you typically have a 30-50 pressure switch in the basement, and on your 2nd floor, if you've got 40 pounds of pressure, you're pretty delighted. So 40 to 45 pounds of pressure on the 4th floor is plenty of pressure. There was talk before about codes. The state of Vermont does go by the International Plumbing Code. Minimum allowable pressure at the International Plumbing Code is 20 psi. All right, we're at 40. Fire flows. We don't expect there's any issues with fire flows. We told staff that, look, in order to get a permit from the Fire and Safety Division of the state of Vermont, we have to have a mechanical engineer do a sprinkler design and show that there's adequate flows. If we can't show that there's adequate flows, we don't get a building permit and we can't build. But we're confident that we can do it. It's just no reason. We don't design the system until we have a building approval and Act 250 approval. So we're fine with a condition that says that we have to provide those calculations to Public Works. We just haven't done them yet. We typically never do them at this point in the process. The issue about density. In the regulations, well, going back about 10 or 15 years ago, the board had formed a committee to look at density in the town center. I was one of the members of the committee. and we made some recommendations as how to modify the regulations. And one of the things we modified, added specifically, was the 400% density bonus for multifamily housing. Because even back then, we realized that the density was way too low in the town center. So basically, what that says is you get a 400% density bonus if 25% of your units meet the affordable criteria. So that's the basis for asking for density. The town goes into a long-winded discussion about block density, but we think it's relatively simple. If the allowable block density is 10 per acre and you get a 400% bonus, that means the allowable block density jumps to 40. Right? If I have a zoning regulation that says I can do 1 unit per acre, and there's a bonus provision that say gives me 2 units per acre, then you don't go back to the original and say, well, that's fine, but you don't have enough square footage to go 2 per acre. I mean, so that's kind of ridiculous. If you're going to give me a bonus of 400%, everything jumps by 400%. Mr. Bove currently has 24 of the 44 units are affordable in the Whittier building. All right. We are agreeable, if you move us forward, that we will make all 44 units perpetually affordable in that building. We have no issue with that. There is questions about whether or not we can actually change those currently from being affordable to being market rate units. At this point in time, we have no reason to pursue that. However, if the board decides that those units for some reason don't meet the affordable criteria, then we might pursue changing them back to market housing if we don't get any benefit for that. So ETC plan, a lot of stuff about we don't conform with the ETC plan in the, not to put you on the spot, David, but at the last meeting, there's a clear statement in the minutes that you said that in your opinion, the ETC plan didn't apply to our master plan and this project. So we haven't tried to design it in accordance with the ETC plan. And now it's just a vision. There's nothing specific in the zoning. There's nothing that says, what the street width should be, what the sidewalk width, that, there's the generic thing, but you haven't moved it forward until it's part of the zoning regulations yet. And until you do that, I think there's very little for you to hang your hat on that topic. Any other big things that you can think of? The building size, we're a little bit over 10,000 square feet. That doesn't require a waiver. You're just allowed to grant that. There's the height waiver. We've said that actually now we think that G and G1 don't need the waiver. Only H needs the height waiver at this point in time. We have designed the whole projects with 8-foot walks. It was 8 foot last time. Staff is looking for 10. 8's a lot of walk. We just don't think that there's enough foot traffic out there to justify 10. Walks are expensive. The town's got to maintain it at some point in time. We don't see that is required. The last 2 approvals that you gave us on this corner had 7-foot wide sidewalks. So we've gone to 8, to try to placate staff a little bit, but we don't want to go to 10. We're pretty happy with the work that TJ Boyle did. Moved some things around, did some nice landscaping. We think the work that Scott Partners has done to change the look of the buildings, as you probably noticed if you look at the architecturals, originally G and G1 had flat roofs. Now they have a peaked roof, kind of changed the style, a little bit mix of different buildings, a little bit of work on H to make that look a little bit better. Big topic of conversation back in June was commercial space. We agreed to make the whole first floor of H commercial space. So you got commercial space that fronts on to Carmichael as well as Commonwealth. And the big thing about this proposal is we agree that we will fully construct Carmichael Street and Commonwealth to the intersection as part of this, along with a start of the town green. And that we will complete that construction before we ask for a certificate of occupancy for any of the units in G, G1, or H. So we're going to get 60 units of market rate housing, very similar to what we've built across the street in Building O. You're going to get Commonwealth built to the intersection. You're going to get Carmichael completed. We're going to start to develop the green. Our consultant TJ Boyle thought it was best not to to do the whole thing until we had a better feeling as to what the uses were going to be from the residents. So we're just going to grade it and seed it and establish the street trees along the front.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, any questions for the applicant at this point? Let's go around the horn. Online, John Mangan.
I don't have any right now.
Tom.
No questions, just a comment on a small point that nobody mentioned. The green moving from the south side of a building to the north side of a building, it worries me a little bit that it won't get enough sun. So I'm not sure why it moved, and I don't know if you guys want to talk about that or not.
Well, we moved it because the corner across the street is an odd corner for the building. You recall the old master plan, that's kind of an acute angle in it, that building. And with the way the bank came in, it just seemed like that corner made more sense. Well, for one thing, the size of the green increased by about a third by moving it across the street, and just seemed to make more sense to us to be on that corner than where it was originally.
Okay, so it's bigger, and then there is a parking lot to the south of part of it, so it's not completely blocked by the sun isn't completely blocked. So okay, so yep, that was my comment.
Okay. Josh.
Yeah, very, very quickly. I'm on page 12. This gets to the affordable housing and then density bonus issue. In the staff report, we see, I'm in the second large paragraph. In any case, the applicant has failed to support the claim that there are in fact 44 existing units of perpetually affordable housing in the PUD as defined in the regulations and under state law. I just want to hear from staff and then the applicant, I guess, or whichever order is appropriate, as what exactly the bone of contention is here at the present moment. I may have missed it a little earlier. Thank you.
Do you have a line number on that?
It's actually page 10, line 344.
Okay.
Josh, who would you like to address that first? Does it matter?
I was thinking staff, since you put that comment in here, just explain what you were saying. Thanks.
So under the proposal submitted on June 10th, and for every proposal submitted by the applicant for over the years, it has been represented that there are 44 units of permanently affordable housing within building K, which is the Whittier building, 4 Carmichael Street. It's also represented that there is already granted a density bonus for that affordable housing. Staff in researching the actual approvals from the Whittier building found that density bonuses were granted up to 15% for things other than affordable housing, not for the affordable housing specifically, because it did not meet the requirement that it be deeded to a land trust or other nonprofit that it guarantees perpetual affordability. So the applicant had made that claim in the narrative, current proposal, but we wanted to clarify that that was not actually true. As Paul mentioned, they're willing to create that deed that creates that permanent affordability in those units that were purported to be. Has concerns about using already existing as affordable housing, especially when it's had a number of fire and life safety violations, and there are over the years, and there's just concerns about the quality of that housing. And again, the bonus that's been granted, and we were troubled to find that this was slightly misrepresented by the applicant. So we wanted to set the record straight and convey to the Planning Commission that this is a new bonus that would be granted under conditions that can be imposed by the Planning Commission. We also have not had a chance to review any deeds that would guarantee permanent affordability. They haven't been provided by the applicant. They haven't indicated that they are working with a land trust or housing nonprofit to guarantee that affordability. So we don't feel that that can be approved at this time. and would like to see that, details of that before we consider that.
Would you guys like to offer comment on that?
Yeah, we don't have too much different to add. If the Whittier building goes back to 1997, it's a long time ago, and I'll be honest, I always thought that all 44 units were affordable, but it turns out there's only 26 that are guaranteed. They all essentially rent for the same rate, but only 26 are guaranteed. Darren mentions there's possibility of another 8. Thank you for that, but those 8 actually apply to another project. So there is only 26. The 8 doesn't get added in. So, but we are willing, if we get approval, to write paperwork for approval to the town attorney and to the staff that would make all 44 units perpetually affordable. No issues on our part whatsoever.
Josh, anything else?
Nope, that answered my question. Thank you.
Mr. Shu?
No, just Paul, just clarify for me. You said that you would make all 44 affordable, but then towards the end you said, but it would depend on market rates or something like that. Can you clarify that?
No, when you go back and look at the original paperwork, it's a little bit confusing. It talks about that the original, some of the loans sunset after 15 years, but if the property is sold or offered for sale, there's a lot of legalese there, but it sounds like that maybe they don't need to remain perpetually affordable, that they could convert to market housing at that point in time. And my only comment was, if we're not going to get any credit for having affordable housing and get a bonus, then there's very little reason for us to continue to maintain these as affordable housing. Okay. All right. So if for some reason the board decided not to move Mr. Bove ahead or not to allow him to use those as affordable units, then I'm just saying there's the possibility that we would investigate whether or not we would be better off to turn those into market rate housing.
Right.
But provided we can come to agreement and move forward, we're fine with making all 44 perpetually affordable.
Okay. Commissioners have their say. I'd like to turn now to staff. And is there anything that has come up you want to comment on before we go to public?
I think we've covered a lot of the issues. We do want to reiterate, there are still some outstanding problems or some outstanding information that needs to be submitted. A lot of times are dealt with some conditions of approval and minor pieces of information. Because this has been such a long and storied project, we wanted to try and get everything tied up and sorted out before we actually give an approval, because it's very easy for things to get lost after the planning commission's looked at it. The other thing we want to talk about is livability of the units in buildings G and G1, particularly on the ground floor. We've expressed this concern a number of times to the applicant about the fact that these are private residential dwellings, but on a very busy public space, or what is anticipated to be if the ETC next plan comes to fruition. We've expressed concerns about glare from parallel or the angled parking, the actual usability of the porches that are included in the plan, because we just don't see anyone living in those units wanting to be in an exposed public space when they're looking for, a safe space and a home to live their lives. We've also expressed that we are willing to work with the applicant on designs and changes that would actually create a sense of enclosure or a sense of privacy for these units, but there hasn't been a lot of cooperation on that. We've suggested moving the buildings back a little more, maybe creating a forecourt or some sort of small pocket park. We've suggested using parallel parking instead of angled parking to avoid the headlight glare. And one of the issues with that also is that overhang from angled parking will actually reduce the effective width of the sidewalks, which is why we're pushing so hard for 10 feet as opposed to 8 feet. An overhang of 2 feet on an 8-foot sidewalk means that it's actually 6 feet wide, which is far less than anywhere else in the town center. So we're concerned just that won't create create the public space that's called for in the ETC Next plan. As far as the applicability of that plan, we understand that zoning regulations haven't been changed to reflect that. We would love to get started on that. It takes a lot of time to get those things right. We've expressed that to the applicant that we want to get there and we want to work on that. But we have to evaluate this project under current regulations to the extent that it conforms with our municipal plans as well. Because ETC Next is an update to the 1991 Town Center Master Plan, that in our minds seems that why would we follow something from 1991 when we know that that may be out of date, even though that's what's referenced in our zoning. We're looking forward to the future and trying to create a project that will actually have vibrancy in the community going forward, not what's today. So the claim about current foot traffic not justifying the need for wider sidewalks doesn't hold up. We're looking out 50 to 100 years in the future to see what can we create here.
Okay.
So I'll leave it at that unless Elisa wants to add any other comments.
So Lisa, I wanted to ask you specifically, thank you, Darren. One of the previous meetings, we had a discussion about the viability of the ETC Next plan, since the plan itself has been approved. And you had referenced some enabling concepts that made it still be an active part of our planning process. That's why I wanted to touch base with you on that. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
You want to go somewhere else on it first?
Nope.
But
I've got to highlight it. And I'm also not sure at what point we need to address the violations that are on the
Not yet.
property. Okay.
the context, if okay, you remember the context for the commissioners, it was discussed that we actually, I believe you'd say that we could use that and it was applicable since it's been approved. Guiding concept.
Specific design requirements in the MXDC district. In the portion of the BDC district which overlays the MXDC district, the general purposes of that district shall apply. In addition, the general concepts and specific policies and recommendations for this area set forth in the Town Center Master Plan, parenthetical 1991, and the Essex Town Plan shall guide all future development. Because the 1991 plan was replaced with the 2021 plan, there I did not find the exact, I mean, I didn't look for the exact section, but generally there are provisions made for the promulgation of an existing plan to be replaced and by adopted and adopted by reference as that former plan, if the plan is updated, just so that you don't have to go through all of the documents, make sure that every plan, every place where it says 1991 in the ordinance and in every other reference.
And then that because the 2020 ETC 21 plan has been approved and is active, even if we haven't enabled regulations, it is still a viable planning tool and it is something that we measure against.
According to our zoning regulations.
Darren?
And just to add on to that, when you're considering waivers, you might want to consider whether those waivers, even if they don't, they're deviating from the current zoning regulations to some extent within some parameters. A lot of those depend on being consistent with our overall plan and overall goals for the community. So we'd like you to make sure those are considered when you grant waivers, if and when you grant waivers.
Okay. Thank you.
And bonuses and so on.
So commissioners, we still have to, we'll go to the public soon.
So just a comment
yes,
on
Paul,
the
go ahead.
ETC plan. We have a master plan, and the master plan has been approved multiple times. And the master plan, as I reminded you last time, serves two purposes. Gives the board an idea of where we're going forward, right? Where the project is going as we go down through. And it also gives the applicant some assurances that he's going to be able to go forward in a multi-phase plan, right? So I understand the ETC came but we have a master plan. You know, it'd be different if we were coming in with a clean sheet, right? Brand new project, right? Never seen before. ETC plan would certainly carry a lot more weight. But in this case, we're coming in with an approved master plan. You can look at the block on the right. It goes back to 1997, right? It's been around a long time. And that certainly carries a lot of weight, a lot more weight than I think the ETC plan does. Now, I understand the master plan is considered to be a sketch. There's no guarantees, but there's a reason we do a master plan. All right.
Thank you.
I would just make the note that just as they make revisions to their master plan, so too can we make revisions to our regulations, including going through a 3+ year process, public process, to vision and lay out our intention for our town center.
Okay, commissioners, is there additional questions or debate that we would like to have right now?
I've got one more question. The report talked about not having a fire ladder truck for the 4th floor. Is that an issue because of separation, or what is that like? Is that a new issue, or where did that come from?
That's kind of a reach in our view. You know, as we all know, the town of Essex has an agreement with the village to provide, share fire equipment and provide fire services. The village has a ladder truck. The village station is actually closer to the project than the town station. So does the town own a ladder truck? No. Does the village own a ladder truck? Yes.
Okay.
Dusty, the town manager actually happens to be in the audience, and he might be able to speak to some of the process of separation, which hasn't been as smoothly as anyone had hoped.
I'd like not to introduce the separation into this discussion tonight unless we absolutely have to. So I think it is worth noting that the staff, and by staff I'm assuming that it includes fire chief, town officials. It basically more than just you. It includes the entire staff that reviews these. So commentaries we have on that come from more than just the community development staff. Is that a valid assumption?
Yes, and this
Okay.
this concern came directly from the fire chief, and it really is just an unfortunate circumstance, and it is something that we will have to work out over time. It's just a problem at this point in time.
Okay, so I'd like to just, I think, commissioners, would you agree that we just acknowledge that is a statement from a knowledgeable individual and staff member that I don't think we debate that.
And these were brought up during the ETC next planning process as well, water capacity and fire.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll recognize that there's a difference of interpretation on that. Anything else at this stage? Tom, John, Josh? Okay.
Nothing from me at this stage.
I'm good for right now.
All right. Thank you. David? Good. Okay, so I'd like to then turn this over to get public comment. At this point, a few ground rules, please. His questions, comments, concerns should be directed to the Planning Commission, not the applicant. We'll decide whether or not we entertain it, we turn it to staff, or we engage the applicant. If somebody has spoken before you and they have said something you want to agree with, it is completely acceptable and actually preferred to just get up and say ditto, or I echo the statements of some of the people before me. We don't want to spend a lot of time with the same statements being repeated. So it is valid. You need to make sure that when you speak, your name is, you clearly present your name so that it can be recorded, and that'll put you on record as far as being in agreement with the statement or whatever. Got quite a few people in the audience from what I see, so we're going to try to do this. Okay, so we've got some folks online. If you can just go ahead and mute. I see a few unmuted lines, and if need be, I'll ask Darren to do that from this side.
And you can use the raise hand feature in Teams, or turn on your camera and raise your hand, or if you must, use the chat to indicate that you'd like to speak, and then we'll call on you, and then you can unmute.
So Darren, can you sort of keep track of that? Because I can see the hands raised, but I'm not going to be good with the chat.
Yep. And I also wanted to mention you do have some written testimony that was, or written public comments that were submitted, and we're happy to
Okay.
talk to those.
So with that, I would entertain questions from the public, and anybody that's here in house tonight that wants to speak, please raise your hand. We'll recognize you. Yes, ma'am. If you could come up to the table, speak your name for the mic.
My name is Katie Ballard. I am here as the chair of the Essex Housing Commission to share the recommendation and feedback on the proposal from our commission. Dear members of the Essex Planning Commission, at its November 17th meeting, the Housing Commission discussed serious concerns about the development proposal for the town center, buildings G, G1, and H, currently under your review. The Housing Commission does not support approval of the most recent proposal because the design includes residential uses on the ground floor of a commercial corridor, which negatively impact the inhabitants' quality of life due to lights, noise, and a lack of privacy. The ETC Next Plan calls for this to be mixed-use commercial zone that specifically dedicates the first floor to commercial use. So the proposal must be revised to reflect this. If an exception for ground floor residential is allowed, the developer must revise the proposal with a redesign that includes proven mitigation strategies for first floor residential uses in mixed-use commercial zone development. Furthermore, the Housing Commission does not support the density bonus request, which relies on existing designated affordable units, which currently have no guarantee of perpetual affordability, to justify additional market rate units. The Housing Commission is also deeply concerned that these units have a history of fire and life safety violations that impact the quality of life for their residents, and we would not support the project unless existing violations were rectified. Livability and dignity of housing is a core belief of the Housing Commission. It is our intent to lead further conversation about the quality of housing in our community and what can be done to better meet all residents' needs. We welcome the Planning Commission and the developer of this project to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Brian Sheldon. Brian, you're on mute and your hand's raised. There you go.
Hi, Chair Brusso. Thank you for recognizing me and giving me a chance to speak. First off, have you seen I'm here today as the chair of the Essex Economic Development Commission, and have you all seen our letter on the topic of this of today's topic?
I'm getting nods, so yes.
Okay, then I don't need to read it into the record, but I will. So I will just summarize. The Essex Economic Development Commission believes that the Planning Commission should enforce the ratio of commercial and residential that is in the ETC Next Plan on this project. I appreciate that there is first floor commercial in building H, but there is not in buildings G and G1. Economic development requires a place for business to occur. We don't need to choose between business development and residential development. Because mixed use development is a great way to allow Essex to have both. So we request that the minimum, the Planning Commission require first floor spaces to be at least retrofittable to commercial standards, so that we can grow Essex in a way that is more of a walkable community. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to offer comment?
We'd like a copy of that. We're kind of surprised we weren't asked to comment on some of these commissions on these topics.
Staff will provide that.
We will forward those. These came in relatively within the week, Paul.
Well, obviously, it must have been on their agenda that they were going to talk about these topics.
So let's continue.
Wow.
Yes. We're going through questions right now.
Okay.
Well, we can circle back and you can fight as well.
Hi there. My name is Tracy Rochester. I live in the Whittier building. I've lived there for 22 years. It was actually owned by EP Management when we moved in. It was a beautiful building. And this is what we're living with now. We're comfortable in our apartment. I raised my daughter there. In the past year, the roof outside my apartment was leaking for weeks. There was a 5-gallon bucket put in the middle of the hallway that I had to empty. I inquired about it and they said, oh, well, Evergreen Roofing hasn't gotten back to us. Like that was the only roofer in town. That eventually did get fixed when I expressed concern about my closet on the other side of the main part of the leak. The storage unit where I have my belongings in another room leaked all over my things last year. So a lot of stuff got ruined. That got fixed this week. A lot of stuff is getting fixed this week after the 7 Days article. And it's a shame that it took that to get things fixed. There are broken locks on the doors. It's supposed to be a secure building. Anybody can come and go as they please. I can't prove it, but I believe that there's some drug activity with people coming in the back door, going to apartments, and then leaving almost immediately. I've seen it. Screens are punched out. The amount of insects in the building this summer was ridiculous. When I asked about replacing the screens, I was told they'll just get kicked out again. There's a pothole in the parking lot that's been there all year. It'll swallow your car. They threw some dirt in it. It's back. The laundry is unusable. The machines are broken. We've started doing laundry off premises for the past over a year now. The stairway is just, I'm waiting for somebody to trip down the stairs, those metal things that they put in the front of stairs. There's one that's loose. We looked at it tonight. It's still there. It's been there for months. The sidewalks on the residential side, we have a man who lives in our building who's in a wheelchair. I don't know how he gets around. We all use carts to bring our groceries in for ease of getting all this weighted stuff in. You have to dodge around, sometimes go onto the lawn to get through. In the wintertime, the sidewalks are not cared for. They're thick with ice. They're thick with snow, slush. The parking lot is barely plowed. I'm sorry, there's just so much in this one building. We have no control over our heat. I have my thermostat set at 68. I got up this morning, my apartment was 79 degrees because the heat just stays on all year long. Very uncomfortable. And I was kind of laughing when they were talking about all this wonderful groundskeeping they're going to be doing for these new buildings. They have not so much as raked our lawn and done the gardens or anything in 2 or 3 years. There's dog feces all over the place. So I'm just really discouraged. I'm disappointed. We're hoping that we don't get retaliation by us saying anything. But after 22 years of, I think for the first 10, 15 years we were there, it was really fantastic. But since the Bow brothers purchased the building, it has gone way downhill. And I'm embarrassed to tell people where I live, where I used to be so happy to tell them where I live. The building was beautiful. We all knew each other, but now I'm just embarrassed. So unfortunately, I feel like we're just being treated as a rent check rather than humans. We are not part of the affordable housing. We've been in the regular, we were never part of the Section 8 housing or whatever they want to call it. But we're just really discouraged. And I think that Bow Brothers Rick needs to take care of what he already has before he builds anything else.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Brian, your hand is still up. Do you have additional comment?
I do not. I just can't figure out how to take it down. I'm sorry.
I can help you, Brian. There you go.
Thank you.
All right. Gina Halpin Barrett.
Hi, I'm Gina Halpin Barrett, and I wanted to agree with the last 3 speakers. I would hope that the Boves take care of what they've already done. The 7 Days article, it's kind of the elephant in the room, and that was disturbing. We have a great employee in Owiso. She is such a gem for our community. She has so much experience in a master's degree in architecture, a master's degree in community development, years of development experience. If she and her staff and Darren wrote a report like that, I would hope that the board and the community listens to them. I also hope the community listens to the last speaker. That area has been so great this summer. I have taken my kids down there. I go grocery shopping there every week. It's so dynamic. There's so much potential down there. There's great parking. There's great beer. There's a great maple latte. There's shoes, toys, bookstore, pet store. There's so much happening down there. It's been so vibrant, and I hope we carry that forward and we build a dynamic, inclusive community that everyone can celebrate and be proud of. It sounds like it's kind of fallen downhill, and I would hope we lift it back up, and I hope they take care of what they've already done before we move forward. So I hope you listen to Owiso and Darren and take their recommendation. Thank you.
You. Any additional comments? Yes.
My name is Taylor Rochester. I've lived in the Whittier apartments since before he even owned the place. It's rare that you can actually watch the place you call home fall down around your ears, but my mom and I have had that distinct displeasure. To start with, I've had to make it a habit of checking to see if the front doors are locked, and I actually have a picture of how the front door was 2 days ago, I believe. 9 times out of 10, they aren't. So I have to flip the lock back in place. It probably shouldn't matter because the emergency stairwell's door is always broken and fairly easily accessible. Speaking of stairwells, our banister had been broken for literal months, to the point where I was shocked that it had been fixed. It turns out a firefighter had nearly taken a header because of it, and while I do feel bad for him, I'm also grateful because someone with more power than I was able to force Bove to change things. As you walk through the communal area, avoiding the many stains on the carpet, you need to be sure to close the 2 windows that don't have screens because bugs will pour in. In fact, there's been a dead moth hanging on the wall for so long that I'm planning its anniversary. Jumping outside, his apartment definitely isn't a place you want to be in the parking lot of as a woman at night. It's poorly lit to the point of having a burned out lamp for months, and Bove doesn't really do background checks as long as people have the money, so there's always something sketchy happening. In the daytime, you feel safer, but then you get to see the amount of dog feces and trash strewn about the place, and you need to avoid both the cracking sidewalk and the massive pothole that he tried to fix with water-soluble sand and a plank of cardboard. What hit me the hardest, however, was finding out that he's living his life in a multi-million-dollar mansion when I'd just be grateful if the leak in our storage room hadn't destroyed items from my childhood. I mean, I knew they were well off, but it felt like salt in the wound to learn he could almost single-handedly repair their over 400 units out of pocket if he only cut back. But he only seems willing to cut back when it doesn't affect him personally.
So, ma'am, I'd like to keep it here. I understand it's an emotional response, but let's keep it focused on the local. That's starting to get outside of known entities and so forth.
That article has put some fear into the Bove brothers. Rick has started doing some basic changes like repainting the halls, fixing holes in the stairwell, and fixing the aforementioned leak in the storage room. But a leopard can't change their spots, and he's going to go back to his old ways the second people stop actively caring. I wear this shirt to remind you that I'm human, that Rick Bove is forcing me and those like me to live in subpar conditions while he plans on spending money on benches and trees. His tenants are human, we deserve better, and we won't get better if he gets approval. Thank you.
Okay. So, thank you for your input, and it's noted. I would like to ask that if we have additional comments concerning the quality of the other buildings, that we limit them to being ditto. Because we are looking at an application in front of us. I think we haven't actually gotten to the point now of talking about the infractions and so forth. We will. But I would like to avoid, speculative comments on Mr. Bove outside of the application process. That's not for us to comment on. So I'm respecting it, what people have for personal experiences, but we are somewhat limited, and We're not judging him outside of this application process and the buildings that we're looking at to some degree at this point. Next, anybody else? Yes.
Again, my name is Katie Ballard. I'm a resident of Essex Junction. And I just want to encourage the Planning Commission to consider, before they approve or deny this proposal, the reality that the more we allow developers and people who rent properties, especially to those who struggle financially or may not have the ability to speak up for themselves, people have to matter more than somebody who is willing to pay for a town green or anything else. We cannot let the benefit of what something might bring to our town, our community, economically outweigh the benefit of what it gives or brings to the humans who live in our community. We are better than this. And I just want everybody to remember that until someone speaks up and stops accepting less and stops letting anything else be more important than humans, we miss a lot of the important pieces. So I just encourage you to really be thoughtful of the value of the dignity that we deserve in our community and not let all of the fancy other pieces outweigh that. Thank you.
Allison Levy.
Hi, thank you for letting me contribute. My name is Allison Levy. I am a member of the town, Essex Town. I also am a member of the Housing Commission. Want to respond to your comment. I believe your name is Dusty. It says I'm new to the Planning Commission. But the comment that you just made that we cannot consider anything about the applicant beyond this particular.
Not what I meant, so I'm going to jump in just for a second. And if I led that impression, that's fine, but we are evaluating an application in front of us tonight. So let's keep focus on that and not what what bothered me was that the statement was going on to where Mr. Bowes lived, what he was doing, and that's not what I want us to be talking about.
No, I don't have anything to say about that. I would just tell you that how fortunate you are that this is not a new applicant. This is someone with whom you have experience. Please don't throw away the experience that you have with how he has conducted his business in our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in the room at this point like to offer additional comment? Sir, please.
Grimsley. I'm a resident, 22 South Summit. How much time do I have?
See where you go. A couple minutes to start with.
Okay. In the spirit of Snowflake Bentley, I'm a carpenter. And if you have time to listen to my story, thank you. I believe that the answer is right in front of us, and I'm speaking to Mr. Bowe, and I'm speaking to his tenants, and I'm speaking to everyone in this room surrounded by this drywall. We've known since 2013. A Danish researcher figured this out. All three kinds of drywall. The recycled paper is bundled up and left uncovered behind Walmart and Big Lots. It is inoculated and grows all of the mold spores to kill us. We make drywall with it, all three kinds. We put it in kitchens and baths. Drywall is where we start. When we move inward, we go to the plywood.
So bring us to the application, please, sir.
I'm bringing you to poisonous materials inside of our homes.
Is it specifically
and I'm
to do with this
speaking
application?
To Joe Biden right now.
Is it specifically
and I'm
to do with this
speaking to
application?
Donald Trump, and I'm speaking to any landowner who doesn't have
Okay,
the
sir, we're done.
Going concern is an accounting term, and if you don't care and you don't live there, this is how this lie is told in America.
Sir?
Drywall.
Sir.
And I'm sorry, but there are alternatives.
Sir, we're not
And if-
talking
and in the
drywall.
spirit of Snowflake Bentley, if you want to build in our small community ideas, then build
ethical, ecological
Okay,
walls.
sir.
Build walls that absorb CO2, build
Sir.
walls that are fireproof.
Sir,
And we can do this.
sir, is outside the scope of this hearing.
It absolutely is not. Where do we stop? Do we keep building mold building machines? Carcinogen. These are
Sir?
carcinogen materials that we're building with.
Sir.
And right now we're continuing to do it in skyrise fashion.
Sir, please relinquish your seat and let's move on.
I'm sorry for my emotion. But my father just died of small cell lung cancer.
My
and he worked in
condolences.
drywall.
That
And
we're
he
not-
also lived in a drywall house.
We are not speaking about drywall this evening, sir.
We should.
We not.
Well,
We're
it's
speaking about
clearly wrong that we're not speaking about the health issues in these dwellings. We're only talking about, I hear words like bonus, and I hear words, I want to hear the words about taxation. Can I ask a question about that at this hearing?
No. No.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about an application this evening,
Okay.
sir. So
Again,
I with
I'm
respect,
sorry for my frustration.
you want to speak of drywall and poison and poison toxins and so forth, but we are talking about this application this evening. So I would ask that you relinquish the seat.
Just remember that Mr. Bove lives in the same house that
If
he's
you
building,
want
in
to
that
speak
regard.
with us sometime about this and more
Yes.
expense, please come in, speak with the staff, and we would like to hear concerns about building and so forth.
20 years I've lived here as a resident. I am concerned in my own house.
Okay, but
all of our houses are.
So let's move on.
And our
All right, let's move on. Miss Levy, commentary to make. Okay. Offer comment. Somebody has their phone ringing and their mic on. If you could please mute.
Yep. Phone number 802-338-8561. I've muted you because we had the noise coming from your phone. If at some point you do need to unmute because you're able to speak and called on to speak, press *6. Thank you.
So next hand raise is Lorraine Zaloom.
You almost got it, Dusty. That's all right. It's a weird name anyway. Thank you for calling on me. I have a couple of concerns. I took the time to watch the June hearing, and I had concerns about Mr. O'Leary's presentation because it felt pretty angry at certain spots. So it felt like part of the procedure between your work and the applicant and the staff, like there was a gap there in terms of having to avoid any of that in the first place. It felt like Mr. O'Leary was almost doing an end run because so when I hear him again today, my concern is that one of the things that was brought up as a kind of a compromise was because he said, I believe, and I don't know that I'm quoting, but the commercial is dead. And of course, we know we're going through COVID and through a big sea change in our community. So to declare commercial is dead is, I think, a little hyperbole. So to me, like to be flexible, I kind of liked what you guys were, kind of came to, at least as an option, was to build the ground floor for commercial specs and make it a little bit more flexible to put residential potentially in there. And when I hear today about the presented plan, I didn't hear any of that. And that was something that was pretty clear how you guys left the last meeting. And I didn't hear the new plan updated with any of that. Sounds like it's still all ground floor residential. My other concern about ground floor residential, as Louisa pointed out last time when the college in Battery Street was brought up as an example, it in my view, is definitely was a missed opportunity because as you watch how well commercial is done in Burlington, as you go down toward the lake, I grew up here, it has only gotten better and better and better, and more of those commercial buildings have become very stable. And so part of the equation to me is what type of commercial you put in there. You put in food, like we have Black Flannel. Black Flannel is very sustainable. It's done very well. The Phoenix bookstore is still doing well. There's a lot of vibrant businesses in there. So to dedicate space to ground floor residential, to me, is quite limiting in terms of what you guys worked so hard on for 4 years to look toward the future and make this walkable. Also, I didn't quite understand what the 8-foot sidewalk is, because it sounds to me like when you're talking about 8 feet, that means going to the road, not necessarily all sidewalk. So I don't know how actually wide the sidewalk is. I also have major concerns about, because of where I live right on Route 15. We have noise issues all the time, and it's only gotten worse. So it's a quality of life issues and the headlights. And when I look at the plan and I see that those ground floor residents are going to be surrounded all by parking, it looks like. It doesn't even look like there's any green space. When you look into master planning, there's a clear correlation between vibrancy of communities and trees and parks and public space. And that is, I've heard it echoed by the commissioners a number of times, how important it is to streetscape. So one of my concerns is the applicant and his past history, and certainly we've all seen the 7 Days article and some of the testimony here today, is that I don't trust that we have a system set up that has enforcement. So what kind of guarantee can we have as citizens that everyone, all the human rights are followed up on and enforced? That's my comment. And thank you for listening to me, and thank you guys for holding this hearing.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else from the audience? All right, I'm gonna, all right, Don?
Well, I wasn't going to speak, but I guess I am. As a select board member who was very aware of all the work that went into the Essex Town Next plan, I would encourage this board to follow it, because we're not going to make progress if we don't follow the plans that we've agreed to.
You all set?
I'm good. Thanks, Dustin.
Thank you. I'm going to bring this back to, do we have any additional comments right now? Gina Halpin Barrett, is your hand is still up? Is it a new comment or is it?
Yeah, I forgot to ask, one of my other concerns that I haven't seen brought up is, as a resident of Essex, the units all seem to be, I think it was 45 or 47 one bedroom and 17 two bedroom. And if I want to see a diverse type of people moving into our community, I would hope maybe less units with 3 bedrooms, some with 3 bedrooms, so that we can get, if it's 45 one bedrooms, that is a limiting kind of housing to me. So I don't know if that's ever been addressed. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Lorraine, your hand is up.
Darn it, sorry.
So I'm going to suspend the public input for a moment. I'm going to bring this back to the table, and I'm going to go around the commissioners again and staff and applicant for additional commentary. So I'm going to start in the room this time. John, what are your thoughts at this point? Questions?
I don't have any, no.
Okay. David?
I don't think I do either.
Josh?
I've got nothing new right now, no.
Tom?
I have a question for Darren. Have you gotten input from the Housing Commission on how to remediate residential on the ground floor?
We discussed that at the meeting yesterday. We didn't get into a lot of details because it's there wasn't time. Staff have also looked into ground floor residential designs. There are certainly ways to mitigate it. A lot of it involves a little bit of extra space between the sidewalk and the public realm and the units themselves. It can involve raising the base of the entry and the windows above the public realm so that it's not you're not staring right into someone's bedroom or living room. Landscaping can help to some extent, and then, again, creating a space that is semi-private. These are concepts we discussed in the ETC Next process as well. Again, we haven't delved into the details of putting that into zoning and design standards with the Planning Commission, but because you have a proposal in front of you, we wanted to bring those up as something that's been discussed in the past.
Mm. So anything that you think is promising for this buildings tree?
So right now, we don't see a lot that is creating that sense of semi-privacy. And we've recommended, some of the things that I just talked about to the applicant. We didn't get a lot of interest there. We mostly got, they can add landscaping. And they've added the porches, which again, don't have any sense of enclosure. So that's as far as we got. We still don't think it's very meeting what we were looking for in the ETC goals.
Okay, thank you.
John. Ming.
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Staff, any additional comments based on what we've heard at this point? Okay. Paul?
Not really. Disappointed we weren't invited to the Housing and the Economic Development Committee. Seems like we were kind of shanghai things where obviously the staff presented their proposal, their side of the equation. We weren't allowed to present ours. I think that's kind of a low.
Just want to note that those meetings were publicly warned and the agenda items were specifically noted. We did, again, try to work with the applicant on addressing some of these issues. We didn't sense a lot of interest in that. Didn't
Take
seem.
an email to let us know
So-
that we're on the agenda for those meetings. I mean,
Okay.
it's all
So,
mistake.
let's acknowledge that might have been done differently, but it is what it is.
Mhm.
I haven't
Well,
seen.
it just doesn't have that much weight because there's only one side presented.
I'm not sure that it has that much. I'm not sure it presents any new information beyond what the staff has already presented in the staff report.
Agreed.
So,
Like the staff wrote it.
So at this point, I want to bring us around to the other elephant that's other folks have brought up. And I would like to read one section of the summary that staff prepared for us. And while all the talk about the waivers, the landscaping, the green, and so forth, I'm kind of hitting on this. And the line is, while some aspects of the project may advance the ETC Next master plan vision, other elements are wholly in conflict with it, and the project still cannot be approved as presented due to a lack of adequate municipal infrastructure and conformance to the current regulatory requirements. Furthermore, the applicant has outstanding violations on the property that must be resolved with demonstration of continued compliance before any additional approvals are issued. Now, I have never, in my recollection of the time that I've been on this commission, had so clear a statement and direct a statement from within a staff report. And I feel that the staff went through and provided significant documentation to that to support that summary. So, commissioners, I'd like to bat that around a little bit and see where we stand on the staff report. And that's in my opinion right now, that's the crux of the discussion before us this evening, is we have a staff report recommends denial. So where do we want to go with that? Now, the public hearing is open at this point, but I'm not entertaining questions from the audience yet. I just lobbed a grenade at everybody's mitts, so somebody take a swing.
So Dustin, I'll chime in. I agree. The staff report's very clear, very strong. It sounds like there might be some paths around some of the objections, but I think at this point, there's not much choice for us but to agree with the staff report.
But to agree with the staff report.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tom just hit it back. Who's going to take a swing at it now? Josh?
I will just ditto Tom. I think the staff report is well written and it presents its case very clearly, and I haven't had any reason to disagree with any of its findings. So I mean, a long way of saying ditto to Tom.
I'd say ditto. I just would add that it seems like a lot of the issues, of which there are quite a few, and ignoring just the violations in the history, but just with this report in general, seems like if you took each one of these things, you could probably address them if you just really dialed into it, but it seems like that's not worked. So we have a whole bunch of issues that are all stacked on top of each other that's creating this weight. That's my only comment.
John?
Apologize for the background noise, but I agree with the staff report, and the violations were a big concern of mine as well. So I'm glad that that has been brought up. But yeah, I don't want a lot of what I want to say is ditto, but I'm in agreement with what the staff is recommending.
David?
I mean, I think my short response is probably a ditto. You know, I want to acknowledge that I do think Paul's right. There's been a bunch of changes from June, many of which stylistically I personally like. So I mean, if we were at the table to get into the meat and potatoes of some of that, I would probably have a lot more to say. But for me, I think the violations point is sort of a non-starter for me. So I spent a lot of time in this staff report and do acknowledge the changes, and but it's about as far as I could go with it.
Yeah. Acknowledgement of a lot of the changes that have been made is also is important to recognize that you guys tried to address our concerns. We appreciate that aspect of it. I do anyway.
So what I believe we have in front of us is a recommendation to deny. I know we have a recommendation to deny. We go to line 927 and staff is recommending that the site plan and master plan amendment be denied. I'm not sure what value the words denied without prejudice imply, and that I'd like to hear from.
Yep. Happy to address that.
So tell me what that means.
Yep. Deny without prejudice is a term that means the application and the proposal could still be presented under conditions that we could support and approval for, but things will need to change. It's not saying this proposal is completely unworkable. There's no way this could ever be approved. We don't want to see it again. That would be denial flat out or with prejudice. So we are willing to try and work on some of the issues that have been identified with the applicant. We're looking to find compromise that fits with the community's defined vision, and some of that may involve changing some regulations that, fairly have been brought up as potential barriers to achieving that vision. And that will take some time. But deny without prejudice means this could come back with different design, different proposal, different details, and could be approved. One of the fundamental issues, though, is again compliance with codes and curing of violations.
So that brings us back up to the paragraph that begins in line 922, which addresses the violations. Mr. Daly has raised his hand, and I'll go to him in a moment. So, commissioners, we've gone around the table, and I've heard pretty much universal agreement or acceptance of the staff report. So, while we're sitting on that for a moment, I will go back to the public and entertain additional public comment. And Mr. Daly, you're up first.
This is strange.
I get the point here listening to the back and forth, and I look at two issues here. One is the way the existing buildings are managed and run by this person, which surely calls for.
Just call a quick point of order. Sorry, I must stick around this.
Go ahead.
You've technically, I hate to be a pain in the ass. You've technically recused yourself from the app, so you kind of can't weigh in.
Dave, I was going to say the same thing. Our operating procedures and regulations say that.
Well, if you don't want,
the reason is
the opinion. Yeah, fine. Go ahead and
Well,
do your thing. I know.
The reason is that a recusal is a declaration of a conflict. So then coming before the body that you're a part of to then present your opinions on it kind of puts you in an uneven playing field. So recusal is typically just a flat out, usually you leave, but it's all good. Sorry.
That I've got to question that a little bit though, because we've had folks, and I've been in select board meetings where they've gone into the audience and been able to comment as a member of the public.
Yeah, when once wearing the hat, always, in my opinion, and on the boards I've served on, once wearing the hat, always wearing the hat. When you identify the conflict and recuse, most boards require you to not participate in the deliberations, the testimony, anything.
Dave is correct. I've seen that too.
Some towns treat it like that. Other towns, as long as you say you're speaking as a member of the public, they allow them to speak. So it's about a 50-50.
We have it actually documented as such. You're technically supposed to leave the room, but with COVID, there's a room could be virtual these days, but it's documented that you're supposed to leave the room and have no interaction.
Well, aren't you, Mr. Secretary?
That he is.
You started it.
I will have to go to the commission at that point. I still would challenge that to some degree without having confirmation. I think if they've declared themselves a member of the public on this, they would potentially have to recuse themselves from future commission discussions on it.
Yeah, I'm glad John found it in the thing.
Okay,
I'm just going off of the other boards I serve on what the operating procedures require.
Let's hold on that for a minute. John Alden, you had comment?
I'm just in support of letting Ned talk because I often recuse myself from public meetings in order to be the presenter. And I do physically leave the room and come back in with a new hat. And that is acceptable in most jurisdictions. If you're worried about it and you're trying to make sure you make no mistakes, it's easy to make a rule that says, no, you can't say anything. But I believe that the rules actually allow you to recuse yourself, leave the room, come back in and be a member of the audience and participate.
We're gonna go with the secretaries. If he's got it, if it's in our operating procedures, we're gonna follow those. So if John's got them.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I just read this somewhere. I was looking something else up, and I found it. As a matter of fact, it was because I wanted to recuse myself on the discussion of development near my neighborhood. That's when I saw it.
Okay. Let me just do a quick buzz on this, because I happen to have a copy of the planning rules of procedure and conflict of interest policy sitting in front of me.
Dustin, I don't know if exactly which one it was. It could have even been, the Rogers meeting laws or for, it was somewhere. I'm trying to find it right now.
I don't think it's in your rules of procedure.
I don't think it is. Because I
And Dusty, I have a memory of having people come to the table, but it wasn't for an application. It was for a conceptual discussion. And my memory is when Lowe's was coming to town, nobody liked that.
So, our definition of recuse, not to beat a dead horse, means to remove oneself from a particular commission proceeding because of a real or perceived conflict of interest. Means no participation.
And I'm looking up, if you look up state statutes on recusal, I think that's where I saw it. It mentions leaving the room and having, leaving the room during non-public deliberations. The state, the reason for recusal.
And that's all true because if you're not a member of the commission, and as soon as you recuse yourself, you're not. You have to behave like a member of the public. So you're not entitled to sit during any of the closed door sessions, but you should be allowed to speak as a member of the public. You've given up your commission seat and become somebody else. And that's how that works. You do have to leave the room and come back in, but that should be allowable.
I disagree. There's an inherent power dynamic that's at play when you're a member of a board, and you don't get to take that hat off. There's no such thing.
Greg has his hand up. Greg, do you have comment on this?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, the benefits of working from home. I pulled up your rules and regulations for the planning commission, which is online on your website. Section 13, if I do my Roman numerals correctly, section 18C, recusal, a commission member shall recuse himself or herself for conflict of interest. Section 2 under that, a commission member who has recused him or herself from a proceeding shall not sit with the commission, deliberate with the commission, or participate in that proceeding as a commission member in any capacity. Though, okay, I should read more closely. I'm not sure what it says about.
I don't.
Not.
Yeah, I don't think that our policies require him to be absent from the public portion of the meeting.
Yep. Okay. Yep. I'm reading too quickly. Sorry.
So I mean, I'm fully respecting this, opinion and so forth, but I don't think we have the ability or the right to reject him from the public portion of the meeting. From the deliberative sessions and deliberations, absolutely. Go.
Okay, thank you, Greg. That is the portion that I read, so I was misreading it.
I don't agree, but I'll let you go as you see fit.
So let me ask, Mr. Daly, if you speak before us, will you be representing yourself as a planning commissioner in any capacity, or will you be representing yourself as a private citizen?
I would be planning to speak as a private citizen. I'm not planning to speak anymore.
Okay. Issue resolved. One moment, Paula. So with that, we're back. Paula, do you have additional comment you'd like to offer?
Question.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. No, Scott can't, so. We need a boom mic, Scott, that just floats around the room. Like the NFL. It's just on those wires. Just
Speaking of the NFL, Patriots are playing at 8:30. I was just curious about the extension of they keep referring to the green. And I suspect that it's nothing like the original one that was proposed in 1991. But I think that's what people are probably picturing. People who've been here since then anyway. So I was curious if there's a representation of where and what this green would look like.
Can pull up the plans, Dusty, if you want to go to that. Or
I can stop by the office.
why don't we do that?
Okay.
All right. Commissioners, is there a desire to continue with the public hearing at this point? I'm not seeing a lot of questions from the audience. Hearing none, I would take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Moved by Shu, seconded by Josh. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
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 I heard 3, so that's 6. Motion passes 6-0. Public hearing is closed. Commissioners, next step, we can continue discussion. We can make a motion, or we can go into deliberative. I did not hear dissension among the around the table about deferring with the staff report or contrasting or conflicting with the staff report. So frankly, I believe we're at the point where we could entertain a motion to accept the staff report. The only thing that I would offer as for consideration is that the motion to deny should also include a sentence that if we're going to do it without prejudice, this should not come back until violations have been demonstrably resolved and processes in place to maintain them or to prevent them from occurring, whatever the record of compliance. That's the last sentence starting on line 925.
to comment on that. In fairness to the applicant, do you want to put some parameters around a track record of compliance and sort of what conditions you want to see met before you review this application again?
I don't know enough about how they would be monitored, maintained, or tracked. So a recommendation could be provided by staff or to staff by the applicant. I would look to the rest of the commission. If we feel that that is required, then we would have to strike it from the commentary and leave it as part of the planning commission finding. But I don't know enough at this point to be able to specify what and how, other than violations resolved.
Would you like to delegate that determination to staff?
I would say yes. If the commission agrees to that that's a component we should have in the denial, then I would think that would be within.
It's in the staff report highlighted pretty strongly. So I think that if we just accept the staff report, that kind of goes without saying. I don't think we have to add anything.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Tom. The major issue that's at play is the violation of the settlement agreement. If that is deemed resolved by the courts, we can work with that as the criterion. Does that, Karen, since you're taking lead on that, does that seem?
Yeah.
Does that address the conditions that were reported to us this evening?
Yep.
David, you're working on this.
No, I'm just wondering if it's tight enough or if it's just that gives enough direction to both staff and the applicant.
I mean, we're not really actually giving them direction at this point. We're denying. Or that would be potentially what we would be doing.
You don't normally attach stipulations.
Correct. So we could potentially just use the staff report as written.
Yep.
And just say, therefore, the planning commission denies the site plan master plan amendment. So I will make that motion to modify line 927 to state that the planning commission denies this site plan and master plan amendment proposal with the rest of the paragraph, I believe, as written. Does that work from a staff perspective?
Yep.
Does that work from a PC perspective?
Sounds good.
Yep.
Tom, is that a second?
Well, I think what
Sure.
I say is you're making a motion to deny and to modify the staff report to have that line say that
Planning commission, line 928. Is that what I? Oh, I had it. Okay, mine's off from yours. So
927.
Staff.
Therefore, the planning commission denies.
I don't think we need to say therefore, but
The planning commission denies.
I think if you just did a motion to deny and let the staff report ride as is, I think you're fine.
okay. Then
You
the
want
motion
to
is to deny with the staff report as written.
Second.
So we have a motion by myself, second by Tom. Additional discussion.
It's denying without prejudice, right?
It's as written.
As
correct.
written.
Yep, okay.
All those in favor of the motion to deny? Aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. We're moving on now to the next item on the agenda. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you all for your attendance. For those of you online for this application, thank you for your input. Where is my agenda? Next item is the minutes from
I know.
October 28th.
Is that right?
I don't know. That's what's on the. What minutes did you give us, Sharon?
Yep.
10:28.
That was the last meeting.
You have two sets. for
Two
site-
sets of minutes. So let's do them both concurrently. I would take a motion to approve the site visit minutes and the minutes from the meeting, the regular meeting of 8/28.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by David, seconded by Shu. Does anyone want to offer changes to either sets of minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor of the minutes as presented signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Other business. None?
Other business, Sharon?
I saw that there's
Nope.
a presentation in our folder.
Who's
Just wanna
is
point
it
out-
zoning?
Yep, so we will also want to point out, because the application review is over, you can have Commissioner
Ned.
Bailey rejoin the commission.
Ned can come back.
Ned, come back.
I'm gonna stay out here, the rest of it. You don't need me.
Okay.
There are,
So in your other business folder on the Google Drive, there is a presentation that the Housing Commission made to the Select Board regarding inclusionary zoning. I just want to point out that they are looking to come to the commission, the Planning Commission, to start discussing what inclusionary zoning, implementing an inclusionary zoning policy would look like, address some questions at the outset, and get your input. We're tentatively scheduling that for December.
Yes, I believe so.
Yep. So that's coming towards you, but that's some background information.
okay. We have the rules of procedure and conflict of interest policy that we need John to stop by and sign at some point as a clerk. Is that within realm, John?
I can stop by tomorrow.
Okay. Other than that, we don't have anything else to sign. And
You have a.
I did.
Yeah.
but-
Well, you should have a letter there too. The denial letter from the last meeting.
I got none.
I'll run up.
So we're gonna hold for a minute for Sharon to go find a letter.
And
Well, you
can-
can sign the letter after you adjourn. I'll run up because it's before here.
So
Oh,
that-
wait a minute.
No, we only
Check that. Here it is.
Okay, thank you.
So do any of the three of you know what Paula was referring to?
Building codes
When-
or building inspectors.
Yeah.
So I think along the lines you were thinking, it sounds like that would be a inspector to enforce building codes, which we don't have
Okay.
locally. I'm not familiar with the state and how they enforce stuff. But yeah, or obviously you might.
So, I mean, the state has code inspectors. So if you build a commercial building, so the only codes that the state of Vermont has, and I'm speaking as a builder now, is commercial codes that deal with fire safety, electrical, and plumbing. So if you pull any of those three permits under a general construction permit, state has code enforcement officers. With the exception of Burlington, there's a handful of towns that have adopted local, like for instance, Burlington's always had building codes. So Burlington has building code enforcement officers.
Right.
So they have building inspectors.
Right.
All of Massachusetts has building inspectors.
Right.
Town of Essex has no local building codes. You can build a single family home and you can screw it up as much as you want. So I just want to make
sheetrock in
sure
it?
you can put sheetrock, much to the sheetrock haters.
We
Um,
did have Dave Sheeran took a new job, but he was working as a part-time with Jesse Dolbecki, the state fireman.
He's the state fire marshal. Yep.
And I don't know that they made a new liaison yet to take Dave Sheeran's place, and that was to help because they're so short-handed themselves.
Yeah, a bunch of towns have done that, like Winooski, Burlington. So if you do a time of sale inspection, the state fire marshal kicks it off. South Burlington does it too, to the local
Yes.
code enforcement officer. I just want to make sure the language we're using is, I think what she's looking for is someone to enforce like life safety codes and health codes, which makes a lot of sense.
And she'll be in, we can have the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. So I see before we disappear, I know we're not doing public. John, John Alden, your hand is still up. Do you want to?
I just wanted to weigh in on the state building inspector issue. There are a handful and maybe as many as 14 local jurisdictions that have made arrangements with the state to have their own state fire marshals or local fire marshals that essentially do the same thing as the state fire marshal. Now that still only applies to commercial structures. There's no enforcement really of single and even two-family dwellings at the state level. So if somebody has that for example, Burlington, they're doing it in addition to the state rules. And it's possible, I haven't spoken to Paula, but there seems to be an ongoing effort to create some position that extends that jurisdiction and inspection practice to at least rental housing of some whatever form that's in. It wouldn't maybe carry the weight of a fire marshal, but it would be more of and I think it's possibly an appropriate term to call it a building inspector, because the state fire marshal is not necessarily called a building inspector, except colloquially, and we kind of call him that, but really he's enforcing the state building and fire safety regulations. So it's a little bit different than some of the rental properties that, once you get above 3 rental dwelling units, then now you're a commercial structure. So you do get the fire marshal in there. And we know there are lots of accessory dwellings and other rental properties that don't fall under that. Even a single family home, if it's just a rental, won't fall under the fire marshal's, his jurisdiction.
Okay. Good info. Yes.
I just wanted to share Katie Ballard for the record. One thing they might be discussing or thinking about are the Section 8 inspectors who go into properties that are rented to Section 8
That's true.
tenants who go in and they have to inspect for a certain livability standard per Section 8 for the landlord to be eligible for them to receive that funding. So there is an inspection that has to happen, and you do have to pay a fee for that. I don't know if it's annually, but that might have been what was being discussed.
That's a whole other different.
Yeah, the Section 8 housing is a completely different, it's regulated by state and federal guidance because it gets funding from them. So it's not really the same. It's not coming down through the fire marshal. It's coming down through other funding sources.
Okay. Okay. Last check with staff. Anything that we need to know about in the near future?
Nothing from me.
Okay. At some point in the next meeting, let's have an update. Let's talk up regulation updates just to get us back onto that cycle again. We've been kind of beat up the last few meetings. Let's get back to that cycle.
Yep.
Commissioners, anything?
We only have one more until the new year, right? Is that right?
Yeah, we only have one meeting in December.
Let's make it a really big one.
Oh, don't worry,
I
you've got
think it
some
might
time.
already be there.
We
All
have
right.
a number of new development applications.
Let's take a motion to deny then, unless you guys want to talk about that at all. Motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Guys?
Second.
Didn't want to leave.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Adjourn 8:20.
Motion carries 6-0.
Yeah.